Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, it looks like we're going to be talking about Ukraine because apparently a lot of things are developing really fast there. It looks like the church is moving missionaries out of Ukraine as of today. So we're just going to look at this wider conflict and the implications and the history and a lot of stuff about Ukraine. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video. If you end up liking it, make sure to leave your thoughts and ideas, anything that you want to share in the comments below. Also make sure to share this with anyone that might find this interesting. So I came across this today, and there's a lot of stuff happening in Ukraine right now. We're going to go over each one, but like, we have diplomats that are being pulled out. The big story kind of for me right now is that missionaries are being moved out. This is an article from today from the Salt Lake Tribune. There's been a lot going on in Ukraine since 2014, and we're going to go over that history and where we're at now, where apparently it looks like Russia could invade Ukraine at any time. So excuse me. It's just, these are just more signs of the times. This is rumors of war, right? And they're probably, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a war. If we look at the map here and we go to Ukraine, you know, Russia has already taken this, what looks kind of like an island, but it's not, this part of Ukraine called Crimea back in 2004 or 2014. And then there's other parts that are controlled by separatists that want to leave Ukraine. Russia is essentially worried about Ukraine and it wanting to go more the way of Europe and wanting to join NATO instead of wanting to stick as a like an ally of Moscow. So in Ukraine, it's basically a buffer, you know, a buffer between the borders of Russia and NATO and Western Europe. Okay, so let me just show you what's going on here. Rising tensions prompt LDS Church to move its missionaries out of Ukraine. Amid uncertainty in Ukraine, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is, quote-unquote, temporarily reassigning its full-time missionaries to locations outside the country. The move was made out of an abundance of caution, as some government embassies in Ukraine are preparing to move certain personnel and their family members. Church spokesman Sam Penrod said Monday in a news release. Many of these proselyters in the Dnipro and Kyiv and Moldova missions are being reassigned to missions in Europe, and a few missionaries who are approaching their planned release date will complete their missionary service and return home. Well, that sucks for them. Thanks a lot, Russia. Some missionaries will serve in Moldova, which is away from any potential conflict areas. Moldova is right here on the west side of Ukraine, completely on the other side from Russia, so it's away because obviously Russia would, if they were going to invade, they'd come in like through here. Okay, the change is not surprising, said independent demographer Matt Martinich, a Latter-day Saint living in Colorado Springs who tracks church growth. Once you see the American embassy moving its staff out, the church usually follows suit. And it's wise to do so, of course, right? Ever since 2014, Martinich said, when the Utah-based faith moved or released nearly 24 of its missionaries there, for similar reasons, Ukraine hasn't been good for the church. Okay, now we do have a temple in Ukraine, in the capital city. So that, I mean, that's one of the few that are in Europe as a whole. So, okay, let's move on. Now, it's interesting because, you know, I don't know really what the likelihood is that there'd be some kind of conflict between the United States and Russia. I find that not probable, but not impossible. Now, early on in my channel, I did a video called Only 17 Years of Peace in U.S. History. So, what you're looking at here is we have all the major conflicts of the United States, like the major wars. And I have the time that's gone by in between each of these wars. But in between these wars and during some of these wars, we've had a lot of like other smaller conflicts going on. So if you add it all up together between small conflicts and major wars, we've only had 17 years of peace. And when we're looking at the large wars, the longest that we've gone without a large war was between the American Revolution and the War of 1812, which was basically the War of Independence Part 2. After that, the next biggest gap was between World War I and World War II, with 23 years. And then we have 10 years between the Gulf War and the global war on terror, right? And then last year the Afghanistan war ended, and I kind of wondered out loud, how long is it going to be? No, with taking this into consideration, this right here, how long is it going to be before America is in its next major war? Because the history doesn't look so good. It doesn't look so good. And knowing that we're approaching the the millennium, the second coming, I would assume that probably there's going to be more war. I would think that we would probably enter the next war sooner than later, but I don't know. I don't know. But here we have this prospect right now with Russia. So just I don't know. We're gonna have to see. I'll put this if you want to check out this video. This is a good one. I'll put it in the description below so you can check it out. Okay, from the Washington Post, 4 maps that explain the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Okay, so we all know Ukraine used to be part of the Soviet Union. It was one of the satellite states of Russia, right? Okay. The country's historical connections is still rhetorically present in these tensions. Quote, I am confident that true sovereignty of Ukraine is possible only in partnership with Russia, Putin wrote in July. Together we have always been and will be many times stronger and more successful, for we are one people. Oh, I forgot to read this. So, back in the 9th century, okay, the historical links date as far back as the 9th century when a group of people called the Rus moved their capital to Kyiv, which is the the capital of modern day Ukraine. A legacy President Vladimir Putin has often invoked when arguing that Ukraine is bound to Russia. So there's this big historical tie. Ukraine gained its independence after the fall of the Soviet Union, 1991, and Russia's kind of been not happy about that ever since. Let's see, why does Putin care if Ukraine joins NATO? Well, okay, the alliance, NATO, has since expanded to 30 countries, including the former Soviet republics of Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. So these little countries right here, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they used to be part of the Soviet Union. Now they're part of so to speak, the Soviet Union's enemy, NATO, right? So, because Russia still wants power, it still wants influence, and it's lost these 3 countries. And now it's worried about losing this one, and this one is kind of a big one, Ukraine. So I guess it kind of makes sense in when you're thinking about power and influence and global politics, you want to maintain control and influence over this former um, part of the Soviet Empire, I guess you could say. The treaty states, the NATO treaty states that if one nation is invaded or attacked by a third party, all nations in NATO will collectively mobilize in its defense. So that's a big problem for Russia. The Kremlin is demanding guarantees from NATO that Ukraine and Georgia, another former Soviet republic that Russia briefly invaded in 2008, would not join the alliance. Georgia is down here to the south, right here. Okay. Okay, so let's see. What parts of Ukraine does Russia currently control? Here you have it in the red. Like I pointed out before, there's Crimea, which is under Russian control. And then you have this separatist controlled area here on the very eastern extreme of the country. And then the colors here represent how many speak Russian as their native language, and it's mostly toward the eastern part of the country. There's a lot over here. Let's see. Are there Russian-linked separatist regions in other countries? Yes. Okay, we don't really need to go over that. But here's a map. See, there's some here in Georgia. Let's see. Abkhazia, South Ossetia. I'm not going to pronounce all these. This part of Moldova, the Transnistria region. Okay, so that's the brief history. Now, in 2014, something big kind of happened that, from what I can tell, kind of kicked all this off. We had this guy right here, Yanukovych, Viktor Yanukovych, who was very Russia friendly and going against the will of the greater population. And there was this talk right here of a Ukrainian-European Association Agreement. Okay, so after rejecting the Ukrainian-European Association Agreement, Yanukovych was ousted from office in 2014 in the 2014 Ukrainian Revolution. He currently lives in exile in Russia. So he he nixed the idea of that agreement with Europe because he wanted closer ties with Russia, probably because he was being pressured, or I don't know, maybe he was a puppet. I don't know. I'm not that far deep into it. But there was a revolution. There's actually a really good documentary on Netflix that I think it was on Netflix that I watched about it, and it's actually really good for being on Netflix. It was actually really good. It documented that whole thing really well. I don't remember the name of it, but I'm sure you would find it if you just did a search. And it talks about how they were actually able to get him out of the country, and so now he's in exile in Russia. Uh, Yanukovych rejecting a pending European Union Association agreement, choosing instead to pursue a Russian loan bailout and closer ties with Russia. This led to protests and the occupation of Kyiv's Independence Square, a series of events dubbed the Euromaidan by proponents of aligning Ukraine toward the European Union. And just so you know, I'm planning on getting to all these other things here. So sorry, I know this is kind of like a lot, but if you're not familiar with what's going on, I think this is good, you know, foundation to understand the rest of this. But we're going to go over this 8,500 troops from the Pentagon's talking about 8,500 troops, and then embassy evacuations and troop buildups. Okay, so we're getting to that. Okay. Okay, so in January 2014, this developed into deadly clashes in Independence Square and in other areas across Ukraine as Ukrainian citizens confronted the Berkut, Berkut, and other special police units. In February 2014, Ukraine appeared to be on the brink of civil war as violent clashes between protesters and special police forces led to many deaths and injuries. On the 21st of February 2014, Yanukovych claimed that after lengthy discussions, he had reached an agreement with the opposition. Later that day, however, he left the capital for Kharkiv, saying his car was shot as it left Kyiv and traveling next to Crimea and eventually to exile in southern Russia. So he is gone, and that's currently what's going on with him. So that kicked off this whole thing, and that's the year that they invaded Crimea. Okay. Okay, so what's going on right now? Okay, Pentagon puts 8,500 troops on heightened alert as U.S. weighs military action against Russia. Defense Secretary, oh my gosh. Okay, stop. Just take a second. Okay, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says, I want to reinforce that as of now, the decision has been made to put these units on higher alert and higher alert only. Oh no, sorry, this is by Kirby. Let's see, Pentagon spokesman John Kirby. I'm sorry. No decisions have been made to deploy forces from the United States at this time. So right now, these units, whoever they are, it sounds like probably it sounds like a division. I mean, it would probably be a mixture of like brigades, or maybe it's a division. I have no idea. A couple divisions. Well, no, I guess like one division. Um, anyway, so they're not being deployed. Among the options presented for the U.S. military in advance of an invasion were bomber flights over over the region, ship visits into the Black Sea, and moving of troops and some equipment from other parts of Europe into Poland, Romania, and other countries neighboring Ukraine. So where are those? Here's Poland, and here's Romania. And Romania, that's actually where I went because, like, as we were going when I was in the army, as we were going to Ukraine, there was some kind of like stopping area there. We were there for a couple days, and then as we were going to Afghanistan, and then after a few days, we transitioned from our like civilian plane charter flight that we were taking this whole time, and then we got on a military flight the rest of the way to Afghanistan. Anyway, that's just a side note. So Poland and Romania, and here's Ukraine. Okay, let's see. Was there anything else here? Okay, another defense official said Putin continues to add more military units and flow forces to the border areas around Ukraine. Quote, he's getting stronger literally by the day, the defense official said. Air Force General Todd Walters, the commander of U.S. European Command and Supreme Allied Commander Europe, has been preparing options for weeks, the defense official and the senior administration official said. General Walters has the authority to move some forces around his theater, but he is keeping Austin, Defense Secretary Austin, and military leaders informed given the gravity of the situation, the official said. So we have a general, the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe, that is able to make some movements as he deems necessary, as Russia, by the day, is getting stronger and more built up in this region here, I guess on the east of Ukraine. Okay, now the State Department orders evacuation of U.S. diplomats, families from Ukraine. So this is basically what prompted the church to pull missionaries out, is following the lead of the State Department. The State Department will begin evacuating families and non-essential staff from the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv this week, according to a travel advisory published Sunday evening. So at the time of this recording, that was yesterday. Why it matters? The move underscores U.S. fears that a Russian invasion could destabilize Ukraine and threaten the embassy's ability to assist Americans. The latest, White House Press Secretary Jen. Okay, now ever since Biden became president, I haven't really been like watching politics too much like I did back during Trump. So I know who she is. I know she has red hair. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. Is it Psaki? Or is it Psaki? I have no idea. So Jen, I'll just say Psaki, said at a briefing on Monday that the U.S. does not intend to carry out an Afghanistan-like military evacuation, which is why Americans should leave Ukraine now. So if you're in the Ukraine and you're listening to this, get out of Dodge. Which, by the way, that's a reference to Dodge City in Kansas, just in case you didn't know. The security conditions, particularly along Ukraine's borders in Russia-occupied Crimea and in Russian-controlled eastern Ukraine, are unpredictable and can deteriorate with little notice. Demonstrations, which have turned violent at times, regularly occur throughout Ukraine, including Kyiv. Given that the president has said military action by Ukraine could come at any time, the U.S. government will not be in a position to evacuate U.S. citizens. So get out now, if that's where you're at. The big picture, Russia continues to amass forces on all sides of the Ukrainian border, including with significant new developments or deployments to Belarus and additional military aid to Russian-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine. Okay, so they're deploying forces to Belarus. So that's right here. So not only are they along here, along the eastern border, but they're also, it sounds like, somewhere up here in the north. So they're really surrounding Ukraine. And given that the Black Sea is directly south, I'm sure that they have plenty of naval power and a naval presence down here. In fact, I think that Sevastopol, I think that's like a major port city, and I think the Russians had like a naval base here already before they took Ukraine, if I remember right. Um, okay, was there okay nothing else there? Okay, now Ukraine, the United Kingdom is withdrawing some embassy staff from Kiev. Wait, I thought there was like some other. Did we already talk about it? There's like a list of countries that have already left. Okay, I'm sure we'll come across that in a little bit if we haven't already. Sorry about that. Okay, so the United Kingdom withdrawing some embassy staff from Kiev. Officials say there have been no specific threats to British diplomats, but about half of the staff working in Kiev will return to the UK. The US has ordered relatives of its embassy staff to leave, saying an invasion could come at any time. Members of the NATO alliance, including Denmark, Spain, Bulgaria, and the Netherlands, are sending more fighter jets and warships to Eastern Europe to bolster defenses in the region. With an estimated 100,000 Russian troops now at the border with Ukraine, the head of NATO has warned there is risk of fresh conflict in Europe. And then here is a map. It doesn't show who is in Belarus, I guess, but we do have uh, roughly where forces are in Crimea, and then also on the western border of Russia and the eastern border of Ukraine. So there's a bunch right here. Okay, so you can see the map. That's where they're at. Okay, nothing else there. Oh, here it is. Okay. Okay, Americans in Ukraine should leave now. No evacuation in works, White House. Okay, there she is, the redheaded Saki. Okay, there are 129 diplomatic missions in Ukraine. Spokesman Oleg Nikolenko tweeted Monday. Of these, only 4 have declared the departure of the family members of personnel: the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, and Germany. The rest have not expressed their intention to follow such premature steps. The US and its European allies say Russian President Vladimir Putin has massed up to 100,000 troops near the border with Ukraine. The White House alleged earlier this month that Russia may stage a fall. Well, I'm not going to say that term because um, YouTube has a problem with it, but basically an attack on itself, making it look like it's somebody else, as a justification for them to attack. Putin has demanded that NATO rule out ever accepting Ukraine as a member. Ukrainian President um, Volodymyr Zelensky wants his country to join the alliance formed to counter Moscow during the Cold War. When Biden was vice president in 2014, Russia invaded the Crimean Peninsula and then annexed the territory from Ukraine following a disputed referendum. Uh, yeah, and I remember that. I remember like it being like really fishy numbers, like it was almost like unanimous or something dumb like that. Putin's government also allegedly supports a pair of pro-Russian breakaway states in eastern Ukraine. Okay, so that's it for the news. So we have military movement and buildup on both sides. Uh, Political, diplomats and families are being uh, told to go back to their countries. The missionaries are being told to leave. They're going to Moldova instead. So we'll just have to watch and just see what happens. Man, if there was some kind of conflict or confrontation between Russia and NATO, like an actual war, things could get really crazy really fast with that. Um, I mean, I don't know because I don't want to get anyone scared because I don't know. I don't think that that's likely, but it's not, again, it's not impossible. So we'll just have to keep our eye on the situation. This is a flare up that we're witnessing. Um, I'd probably say the biggest flare up since 2014. So just more signs of the times, I would say. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Do you have any additional information? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think this is all just going to kind of peter out, or do you think that there's going to be a big flare up? Uh, what are your thoughts? If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Make sure to like this video if you liked it, and then also share this with anyone that would find this information interesting. And I'll talk to you guys later.